I've been riding fixed gear exclusively for the past 11 years, and I've developed some opinions and figured out some things that a lot of people won't agree with. But just because we don't agree with something doesn't mean that we can't be civil and still get along. As oddly divisive as something as fun as cycling may be. Here are 15 of my fixed gear hot takes. But you know what's not a hot take? This message from our sponsor, Wabi Cycles. The most fun that I've ever had throwing a leg over a bike comes from Wabi Cycles. Stick around until the end of the video to learn more about them. People with brakes on fixed gear group rides scare me. And I know this sounds like the cliche premium rush thing where brakes are death, can't stop, don't want to either, but when everybody is on Brakeless, everybody's on the same page for how to stop, how long it takes to stop, and just generally not crashing into each other. But once you throw brakes into the mix, and if I'm riding behind somebody that has brakes, I want to get out of that position just as soon as possible and be in front of them. Straps over clipless all day, every day. I just don't care about being as fast as possible all the time. And the power transfer when I have clips and straps is good enough. I could do seated skids just fine. I could sprint off the line at a red light just fine. I like dressing in whatever clothes I'm going to wear for the day when I ride my bike. I don't like wearing cycling specific clothing. I'm parking my bike and I'm getting off and grocery shopping or going shopping in the sneakers that I have. I need to walk when I get off my bike. There's also just the safety aspect. I've used clipless before, and occasionally when I would try to pull a skid or even just slowing down, if my cleats were too worn out, I would just pop out of that. It's the last thing that you want to have happen when you're going downhill on a brakeless fixed gear. I know a lot of you are saying like, oh, you gotta tighten it down and make sure that the springs are super tight whenever your cleats wear down, but then I find it uncomfortable and then it hurts my knees if the springs are too tight. And with clips and straps on a bike, that's just something you never have to think about. If your foot's in there, it's in there unless you slide it out. When I first started riding fixed gear back in 2012, everybody wanted everything to be track specific as possible. I swear, Gary. And the track-specific spec for cranksets is 144 BCD. 130 BCD cranksets have access to a lot of smaller chain rings, which is particularly something to consider today when track lacrosse is becoming more popular, or if you're a climber. And there's still some really nice 130 BCD cranksets, namely the Sugino RD2s and the SRAM S300s. I've ridden both of these cranksets, and I honestly could happily live on them. 130 BCD cranks are also way cheaper than track-specific 144 BCD cranks, and for a lot of people, they feel mostly the same. Just because a crankset is 144 BCD doesn't automatically make it a great crankset. If I had to choose between a Sugino RD2 crankset or an IRD Defiant crankset, I don't even know if is IRD still around even? Anyway, Andel makes this fluted vintage style crankset. I would go with the Sugino 130 BCD RD2 crankset 100% of the time because it just feels better, even if it is 130 BCD. Colored rims can be really tastefully done. It adds a lot of pop to a build and makes them really unique. Like, I know a guy that I've run into at a few rides or just on the bike trail in Sacramento. I don't even remember his name, I'm so sorry, but I know you're the guy with the purple anodized deep V's, and I think they're sick as fuck. Having colorful rims on your bike, especially if you do it in a really tasteful way, it immediately communicates to people, I'm serious about biking, but I'm not competitive about biking. Which signals to roadies, no, I'm not interested in racing you, but makes it all the more funnier when you drop them on a bike trail. Let's bring color back to Fixies, because it was fun. Back when I first started riding, my dream wheels were just white Velocity Deep Vs, and I know white's not technically a color, but it might as well be at this point, because everyone's wheels are just silver or black. Still think white Velocity Deep Vs or B43s look super sick. Why aren't people doing this anymore? I do it, but I want to be tubeless on my bike. If you slam your stem, and your stem isn't at least parallel with your top tube, you shouldn't have slammed your stem. It's as simple as that. You just slammed it for looks. You weren't ready to actually handle the aggressive arrow position, and you cut your fork in the name of Fixie points. And on that note, slamming your stem is stupid. And yes, I do have a slam stem, but I can still have this opinion and admit that my bike is stupid. We're Fixie riders. They're all stupid to some extent. The spacers exist on a threadless system so that you can have adjustment. You don't have to cut the fork to slam your stem into half an aggressive fit. All you're doing when you're slamming the stem is 1, making the bike look cooler, which is why most of us do it in the first place. 2, shaving a few grams that don't really matter. And 3, making it really uncomfortable for somebody who would potentially want to buy your bike down the line. It's just shooting yourself in the foot. If you want an aggressive fit, you can still slam your stem and keep maybe like 20 millimeters of spacers on top of the stem before it starts to look really goofy. Bike fit is a matter of millimeters, and just having that 20 millimeters of stack could really help you out, or somebody down the line out. Or you could also experiment with different angles of stems to get an aggressive fit without having to cut it. Depending on who you're sighting, slamming your stem may not even be the most aerodynamic and fastest position possible. Narrower bars, they're lighter, they're more aerodynamic, they're just as comfortable for a lot of people. You can fit them in tighter spaces. You can split lanes in traffic much more easily and safely. Why do we ride wide bars again? Risers are the worst kind of handlebar. Unless you're tricking, sure, go ahead, ride risers. But if you're not tricking, they are very limiting. They only offer 1, maybe 2 hand positions if you want to scrunch up by the stem. And even then, the hand position it offers isn't that great. When I'm riding long distance on risers over 50 miles, my wrists start to hurt and my forearms start to get tingly and numb. And that's just not something that I experience when I'm riding something like townie bars, which offers pretty much the same benefits as risers, but they're also just way more comfortable, offer more hand positions, and still look really sick. The biggest benefit that I see with risers is that they are most comfortable for new riders who haven't tried out different styles of handlebars. Just to temper my hot take, while risers are the worst type of handlebar, I still like them. Track drops suck, but we need to bring them back. Back when I started riding, everybody wanted everything to be as track specific as possible, including the handlebars being track drops. And I rode track drops on my second bike, my Kilo TT that I built up. They were Soma Major Taylors, and I loved those bars. But Fixie riders moved away from track drops because there's more comfortable, more practical drop bars out there. But there's no denying that Fixie riders, we do things a lot of times for looks. And track drops, ooh. When I see track drops with track grips, I'm like, that's what a bike needs to look like. Fixed gears are supposed to be impractical. They're supposed to be fun. And part of the fixed gear spirit is that you're riding such a stupid bike that it forces you to be a better rider if you don't want to get thrown off the dang thing or end up with back pain. You have to get stronger if you ride a fixed gear. And track drops embody that spirit. You have 2 hand positions right at the top, right with your hands next to each other near the clamp, and then the second position is just in those deep, meaty drops. If you're getting in those drops, you have to be a strong rider. You have to be able to support your weight with your legs and push hard on your bike, and you have to be able to maintain that position. When I was riding track drops, I rode in the drops most of the time. There's just something about the limitation of track drops that's really beautiful, and the way that it forces you to be a stronger, faster rider with how impractical and unforgiving they are. And for that reason, we need to bring them back. They are the most fixie handlebar. I will never trust carbon fiber. I will never put carbon fiber on my bike. Metal materials, before they fail, they dent, they bend, they crack, they let you know that they're going to fail, but carbon fiber just catastrophically explodes, and often to the injury or even death of the rider. I fly with my bike, I lock up my bike, sometimes people bang their bikes into my bikes at the bike rack, my bike falls over when I'm shooting videos because of the wind, I throw my bike in cars, I throw my bike on trains, and I crash my bike. I need a material that I can trust, that I can depend on, will not explode on me and kill me. Shaving grams isn't all that important to me because for the people that I ride with, I'm still usually faster than most people, even if they have much lighter carbon fiber bikes and carbon fiber parts. Cyclists just need to stop obsessing over shaving grams off of their bike because in the wise words of Grant Peterson, OG bike pioneer, the heaviest part of any vehicle is the engine. Carbon on beginner bikes is just outright stupid. That's just an oxymoron. And when you get beginner carbon fiber, like a carbon fork on a $300 or $400 fixed gear, that carbon fork is going to be just as heavy as a steel fork. Even if that carbon fiber is heavy, it still has the potential to fail catastrophically and just explode on the rider. There's just no advantage other than that those companies get more sales for people who don't know their stuff. Carbon forks are overrated. A lot of people like to put carbon forks as an upgrade on their bikes because they say it dampens out the road vibrations and makes it ride smoother. I've ridden carbon forks, I've ridden steel, aluminum. The only one that I can say has an appreciable difference is aluminum. They tend to ride pretty harshly. But between a nice carbon fork and a nice steel fork, they ride pretty much the same. The fork is probably the last component that I want failing on me because the fork is what's keeping your face from the ground. The correct bottle position on a fix here is on the down tube. You can have 2 bottle positions, but if you're gonna have one, make it on the down tube, which is just baffling to me why some companies make fixed gear frame sets and then put it on the C tube. Because guess what? On a fixed gear, you can't coast. So if you're pedaling and trying to grab that down tube bottle, you're trying to grab in between your moving legs and kicking yourself in the face. The down tube bottle is just way more accessible. And for anybody that might argue having your bottle on the C tube looks cooler than on the down tube, no. Your frame set's country of origin doesn't really matter. Just because a frame set is made in a particular country doesn't automatically mean that it's a good bike. There are plenty of amateur bike builders in the US that can slap made in the USA and still give you a really shit misaligned bike that has cracked lugs. And at the same time, just because a bike is made in a manufacturing country of East Asia doesn't exactly mean that it's a poor quality bike. Like, you have to keep in mind that a quality is quality. It doesn't matter where it's from or what language the guy who put it together speaks at home. These days, most mid-range to high-end bikes are made in Taiwan because the skill and infrastructure is here. Also, the labor is cheap, but that's a whole nother conversation. Doesn't mean that they make poor quality bikes here. Hell, they make some of the best bikes in the world here in Taiwan, but you don't see people clamoring after a made in Taiwan sticker. Anyway, I visited a Wabi factory, and it was amazing to me how precise they have to be with every piece of tubing, with every lug. When they're brazing the tubing to the lugs to make sure that it's just the right temperature so that it's hot enough that it brazes and bonds properly, but not too cold that it takes too long and makes it brittle, to seeing them have to redo parts of the bike because it was just a few millimeters or even a fraction of a millimeter out of alignment. They had quality control through every step of the process, and everything had to be exact within fractions of a millimeter of tolerance. But then people still have this idea like, oh, but my bike was made by George down the street in his garage in the USA, so my bike is better. I paid $3,000 for my frame set, so it's better. Nope, it's better. It has an American flag. People need to look at quality more and less at stickers. I hate watching fixed gear content. It's not that I don't like it, it's just that I spend so much time making fixed gear content. That is just the last type of content that I want to consume. I'm at the point now where I can't watch it without at least feeling a little bit of anxiety and getting the cog 49:17 gear ratio in my head start spinning of new video ideas. I just don't watch any fixed gear content or really any bike content except for Pathless, Pedal, Spin Dad, and Locked In. What's up, guys? Miss you guys. Love you guys. Because they're content creators that I know personally, and when I watch their videos, just a fan in the crowd going, yeah, go make that content. We out here. And Fixie famous shoutouts to Julian Corona, Brandon Black, Brent David, Mario Perez, and Onchi for helping to make these fixed gear videos possible through their support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.